A nightmare vacation. Hello everyone. 2 years ago, my best friend and I sent our vacation story to a YouTuber. We weren't specifically planning on posting it on Reddit, but after what happened to us this summer, we decided to share it with a wider audience so you could hear all the details. Since we're also going to tell you what just happened to us in a future post, we'll be sharing it with you. My name is Anne. I was 26 years old at the time. I'm completely normal and don't particularly believe in paranormal stories. Anyway, I never thought something like this would ever happen to me. I'm a teacher, and 2 years ago at work I met a colleague, Florence, with whom we hit it off immediately, and we often see each other outside of class. Since it's currently the summer holidays, she invited me to spend a few days at her parents' house. They're traveling in the south, in the countryside around Toulouse, a small village called Lautrec. The house is great, very big, with a swimming pool, a large garden that directly overlooks fields, and it's the last house at the end of a cul-de-sac. So I went there and we had a wonderful few days. Swimming, cocktails. In short, a vacation. One evening while we were watching a movie on TV, I went to my room to get my phone, which was charging on my bedside table. We leave the windows open at night to let the cool air in. There's not much risk because it's a quiet corner. There are wrought iron bars in the hallway windows, and the other windows have mosquito nets. So I went into the bedroom and saw that one of the 2 panels of the mosquito net, which is actually in 2 parts, had fallen off. I didn't worry too much about it and went back to watch the movie. At the end of the movie, my girlfriend and I went to bed. We each have our own bedroom separated by the bathroom, and she told me she was going to reattach the mosquito net, as it happens often. Except that the mosquito net was still attached to the window. At that moment, I thought I must be having trouble seeing, and I went to bed. The night passed normally. I heard noises in the hallway several times. We sleep with the doors and windows open to create drafts because it's hot. But I thought it was Florence going to the bathroom, or her cat, who usually acts crazy at night. At one point, I heard a noise in my room, and I was afraid that Poupée, Florence's cat, had locked herself in the closet, so I got up, a little dizzy, and went to open the closet. Poupée wasn't there, but at least she couldn't lock herself in it anymore. In the morning, I woke up and Poupée was sleeping next to me on her back, all cute. So I grabbed my phone to take a picture of her. Just as the picture was saved in the gallery, I saw a photo I didn't remember at all in the little icons at the bottom. I looked, and there I saw a picture of my feet in front of the closet. I swear I was really surprised and I didn't understand at all. So I went to see Flo in her room and asked her if she was the one who took the photo. She told me that the photo was taken from under the bed given the point of view, and that she wouldn't have been amused by it. But it pissed me off because she didn't really take me seriously. She almost thought that I had taken the photo to show her and freak her out. Anyway, we both thought that one was making fun of the other. In the afternoon, we went to the pool and Flo unlocked her phone so I could take a picture of her on the deck chair. And then she saw that there was an unknown photo in her camera roll, a picture of her sleeping. She told me this and asked if it was me again. I assured her that no, it wasn't me. And I could clearly see from her face that she wasn't pretending to be scared. Evening came and we started to think that to avoid any problems, we were going to close all the screened windows and leave open only the ones with bars where no one could get in. I assure you, in a big house in the middle of the fields, you get scared quickly, especially with the photos we'd just found. The windows and shutters were closed and we settled down in front of a movie as usual before going to bed. We left the bottom of the electric roller shutter slightly open so that Poupée could come in and the window barely ajar. And after the movie, we went to bed. We weren't too worried because we'd still closed everything and checked the front door and skylights twice. In the middle of the night, I heard noises again, but not in the hallway this time, but under my bed. I was really scared. I wasn't really awake, but the adrenaline rush hit all at once, and I woke up, really. I didn't know what to do, and I told myself I had to go somewhere else. I thought about locking myself in the bathroom, but then I realized I couldn't leave Flo alone. She has a key in her bedroom door, and my guest room door doesn't lock. But I figured if I rushed, it would be really suspicious, so I said out loud something like, "Doll, why are you waking me up at this hour? Okay, come on, let's put some kibble back in the bowl." Well, obviously there was no doll. I got up as calmly as possible, even though my heart was beating 3,000 kilometers per hour. I'm sure there's someone under my bed, and I head to Florence's room. I go in, I try to lock the door, but the key isn't in the door. I wake Flo up, quickly telling her to give me her door key. She's confused, so she tells me the front door key is in the storage compartment. But I yell at her, "Your bedroom door key!" She wakes up for good and tells me it's somewhere on the desk. At that moment, we hear movement in my room, like really moving, footsteps. We're petrified. I head to the desk. Flo tries to turn on the light, but in a panic, she and I can't do anything. We're both super clumsy. She turns on the light, I find the key, We hear footsteps getting closer, and I run to the door, lock it, and just at that moment, we see the doorknob lowering, and we try to push the door open. We both look at each other, we can't speak because we're so horrified. And when the intruder tries to open the door again, we're afraid he'll try to break it down. I ask Flo to take her phone and call 911 because my phone is still charging in my room. She tries to grab hers from her table, but only the charger is still plugged in, and there's no phone. And then we hear a chilling laugh behind the door. He must have heard our conversation. I then thought he wasn't supposed to know we were teachers, and I said, "Flo, wasn't your work phone still in your backpack?" Obviously, she doesn't have a work phone, but she immediately understood what I was trying to say. She replied, "Yeah, I hadn't thought of it. I'll get it right away." She opened a closet and made a noise as if she were searching through her things, and then we immediately imitated a conversation with the police. No more noise in the hallway, but we heard a car speed off at the end of the alley. We stayed locked in for a good hour, and then we left the room, grabbed an ornamental sword from the hallway wall, and since we couldn't find our phones, we ran to the car with the sword, which would have been useless since it's a decorative object, and drove to the police station. Finally, we tried because we realized the tires had been slashed. We went back out and ran to our neighbor's house, Remy, the closest one my friend knew well, who let us in. Luckily, what a relief! It was indescribable. We finally felt safe. Later, the police arrived and made us sign the reports, but the investigation never led to anything. They took fingerprints, but nothing new. The stranger must have been wearing gloves. However, they did find out where the individual had entered. He probably slipped through the small opening we had left so that Poupée could get in if she wanted to during the night. He had put a piece of wood to hold the shutter up a little and slipped through. The next day, we took some photos with the neighbor's phone. These are the slashed tires, the shutter he came in through, and a photo of little doll because a cute cat is always cool. We found our phones in the pool. He must have put them there while we were sleeping so we couldn't use them. We're still a little traumatized by this story, and we check that doll is still in the house at night before closing everything. Meeting after school. Hello everyone. I'm going to tell you a story from several years ago. It was December 2014. I was 12 years old at the time, and I was taking the bus home from school every evening. It was the last week before the Christmas holidays, so I was quite happy and euphoric, especially since I had ordered my first phone as a gift. It was going to be a moment of freedom for me because my parents were quite strict. I wasn't allowed on social media, etc. Anyway, one Wednesday at noon, I was finishing school and heading to my bus stop as usual. It was about a 5-minute walk to get to the bus stop, and I was traveling with a friend named Laura, who was taking the same bus but in the opposite direction. Since her bus leaves before mine, I go to her stop to wait with her. We sit under the bus shelter and we start chatting about classes, normal conversations between middle school girls. At one point, we're interrupted by a male voice who says, "Ha ha ha, you also have Mr. Thomas in math. He's terrible, ha ha." At that moment, I had my back to this person, and Laura curtly replies that yes, we have him, and that he's not as stupid as he says. Then there's a pause. The bus arrives. She gets on. The guy too. Nothing unusual, even though at the time, Laura seemed strange to me. 2 days go by and Laura doesn't show up for class. I tell myself she's sick. It happens with the cold weather. You catch a cold quickly, and I didn't have a phone or anything to talk to her. So Friday evening arrives, the last day of classes before the holidays. I finish at 5:30 p.m. It already pissed me off because I was finishing late, and on top of that, my math teacher had asked me to talk at the end of class because of the bad grades I'd gotten on the last 2 tests. Math wasn't my strong point, and it still isn't. I leave a good 10 minutes after everyone else, so I miss my bus, which comes at 5:45 p.m. I walk towards my stop and sit down at the stop where I was with Laura, because it's covered by a bus shelter, and mine is just a sign with no bench or roof. I couldn't be bothered to stand and wait for 15 minutes. I hear a voice. "So it's Mr. Thomas who kept you longer?" I turn around and I finally see this same guy. As last Wednesday, I say to myself, okay, he's just super sociable. Nothing weird considering how Laura spoke to him the other day. I'm going to be nicer than her and make a little conversation with him. But looking at him, I noticed that it was not at all a 14, 15-year-old student, but a guy of at least 30 years old, super well-dressed and well-groomed, without school bag or anything, with the beginnings of a beard. I find it super weird, but I act as if nothing happened. I continue the conversation. We talk about teachers, and he immediately recognizes who I'm talking about when I say the names. To try to fool him, I even tried to make a mistake with a teacher's name, and he corrected me. I just told myself I was crazy and that he was probably just a supervisor, which explains why he knows the teachers' names. I see my bus arriving in the distance, and I say to him, "Hey, I'll take my bus." He says, "Oh, you're going to name of my city? That's funny. I'm going to see a friend there." He crosses the road and follows me to take the same bus as me. I admit at the time I thought, this is a bit of a mistake. The guy on Wednesday took the same bus as Laura, so as luck would have it, he's going the same way as me. But okay, it's likely, I still have my doubts. During the journey, I start thinking about the possibilities that the guy is a psychopath, and I tell myself I have 20 minutes on the bus to put a plan into action. I know that neither of my parents were home when I was about to go home, so it was a mess. I had no way to warn anyone about the situation. I was alone. And it was horrible because even if I had a bad feeling, I couldn't go accusing someone wrongly. If I started accusing him for no apparent reason, people would literally think I was a crazy kid, so I didn't say anything. We were gradually approaching my stop, and after that stop, I had to cross a small part of town with buildings, then take a very dimly lit path to reach the residential area. I got off the bus, he also got off through the back doors, and then I turned around, looked at him, and he smiled at me with a blank stare. After 7 years, I can tell you that his gaze still traumatizes me. I started walking towards the buildings. I cried uncontrollably, literally feeling the tears streaming down my face. I passed people who saw me sobbing but paid no attention. I arrived in front of a building and there was a group of guys in their 20s sitting on the steps, and one of them spoke to me and said, "Little one, your notebook." I didn't hear him. He stood up, picked up my report card, then caught up with me to give it to me. Then he looked at me and said, "Oh, what's wrong, little one?" "How are you?" His name is Medhi. At the time I couldn't speak, I was in a state of shock and way too stressed. And then the 30-year-old guy grabbed my arm and started yelling at me, saying, "But come on, Maya, why are you leaving like that? Get back in the car right away. Mom's waiting for us." In my head, I screamed, but nothing came out. I was frozen. He pulled my arm and I moved away from Medhi. He reflexively looked at my report book and saw that my name wasn't Maya, but Mayava. Luckily, in his head, he understood right away. He ran up to the guy and punched him hard. His friends started running towards us when they saw something weird was happening. The 30-year-old guy ran off and Medhi took me straight to the police station. They called my parents, I filed a report, and the guy was never seen or found, despite the fact that the same complaint had been filed 2 days earlier for a similar profile by Laura. The guy in question had followed her, and Laura had joined her brother at basketball practice. In fact, on Wednesday, she responded coldly because she found it weird that a 30-year-old guy was talking to her about the math teacher. This whole thing literally traumatized me. My father came to pick me up every night after school afterward, and Medhi also remained super close to my family for avoiding me for who knows what. And that's the end of the story. I never found out if the guy had done it again with someone else. Moral of the story? My kids will have a phone as soon as they start elementary school. Joke. The time I was almost kidnapped by a repeat predator on my street corner in the middle of a snowstorm. So to give you some context, this event took place in Quebec in December, during a snowstorm after approximately 5 p.m. So it was pitch black, I was about 9 years old and lived near my elementary school, so I was walking to and from school with only my older sister. But after an extracurricular activity that lasted longer than expected, I had to walk home alone around 5:30 p.m. On top of the darkness, 20 centimeters of snow was forecast for that evening. So, needless to say, before leaving school, I had put on my snow pants, hat, neck warmer, etc. to brave the storm. After 10 minutes of walking in the cold and with almost zero visibility, I arrived at the corner of my street. Without warning, a man in black, in his late 40s, put his hand on my shoulder and asked me to help him dig out his car in his backyard. I timidly replied that I couldn't because my parents were waiting for me. He retorted that he'd give me $10 if I helped him. Being a mercenary, I hesitated and unfortunately finally agreed. He asked me to go ahead of him to the door that led to his yard. After I walked through the door, I wondered, but where's his car? Can't I see it because I can't see anything? That's when I heard him lock his door and say, "Would you like to have some hot chocolate before we get started, big boy?" This completely terrified me. Realizing I was in deep shit, I told him that I absolutely had to go. And that's when things took a dramatic turn. He comes up to me and slaps me saying, "Didn't your parents teach you any manners?" Then with a smile and a soft voice, he adds, "I'll do it for them. Awele viens ici. Come on, come here." He takes me by the arm and leads me back to the door of his house. I do what any child would do. I scream at the top of my lungs, and I manage to break free from his grip. That's when I say to myself, I have to run away, but how? He has blocked the door to his yard. Then with my winter boots, my coat, and my snow pants, I don't have much agility or speed. Add to that 10 centimeters of unshoveled snow. That's when he comes up to me, laughing as if he's enjoying seeing me panic with a shovel, and tries to hit me in the legs, probably to stop me from running away, but I just managed to dodge. In a last-ditch effort, I climbed her fence to cross from her yard to her neighbor's. I made it, but falling down the other side, my snow pants tore. I then took the adjacent alley and sprinted as fast as I could until I reached my yard. I pounded on the back door with all my might until my sister let me in. Just as I closed the door behind me, I saw a figure holding something in its hand in the alley. In total shock, I couldn't even answer my sister. So she called my mother, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I jumped at my mother's call and burst into tears. My mother realized something serious had happened. She was asking me what had happened. Completely distraught, I simply said, "The man down the street." My mother immediately went to wake my father, who was taking his usual nap. My father, in turn, asked me what had happened. I only managed to tell him snippets of what had happened. Enough for him to become furious, grab his coat, his jalaba, and a kitchen knife, and ask me to follow him to show him the house. But being far too traumatized and barely able to speak, I told him, "The depraved house on the corner." After that, the police arrived, took my statement, and I haven't heard from the investigators or my parents again. They wanted to spare me further trauma. The trauma was so great that I finished the school year at home, and then we moved, for other reasons. 10 years later, my father finally told me the whole truth. In fact, he did arrive in front of the man's house, and the front door was ajar. Inside the house, everything was dark and messy. There was only a faint sound of music coming from a radio. My attacker had fled, but the police finally arrested him. This man had been incarcerated for assault, kidnapping, and offenses involving different age groups, and had been paroled for good behavior. So he went back to prison and had his sentence increased. It took me at least 2 hours to write this because every time I remember it, his face and his laughter come to mind. Thank you for reading this far. What do you think really happened that night? If you enjoy diving into the dark corners of Reddit, don't forget to subscribe. Check out the other terrifying tales on my channel. Stay safe, lock your doors, and I'll catch you in the next videos.